Hey friends, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, I'm so glad that you found me. I'm Mindy and this is See Mindy Mom, and today I'm sharing with you 2 meal ideas that are not only very inexpensive, only about $8 altogether for the ingredients that I use, but that are also very easy, super easy, so stay tuned. So I was chatting today with my friend Miranda over at Running on Plants. She and I recently did a video together. I will be sure to leave her channel linked in the description box below. And she is a good buddy of mine, and we chat almost every single day and bounce lots of YouTube ideas off of each other. And she shared with me that she had just recently filmed a video using ingredients from a grocery store that is a little bit more expensive than the ones that she usually frequents. And as fate would happen, I was actually walking into a grocery store in my area that tends to be a little pricier to shoot a completely different video. But when she told me her idea, I said, you know, friend, I think I'm gonna steal that idea from you. And she was like, have at it, friend. So that is what I'm doing today. For this video, I shopped at just my traditional supermarket in the area. We only have one really that I would consider to be just a standard supermarket. So not like Walmart or Target that have a grocery store in them, you know, big box stores like that, and not a store like Sprouts or Aldi that's smaller and has a lot of local or house brands. This grocery store is called Reese's, and while they do tend to be on the pricier side just when you're comparing regular everyday prices, their sales are really, really great. And I was walking in there to pick up some produce for this week because they had some really great produce prices. And when Miranda told me what she was doing and she said, hey, you should try out this video concept, I was like, well, I think that's serendipitous because I happen to be walking into this grocery store anyway. So I'm going to show you what I got. I spent about $8 and some change after tax, and that is going to make dinner for my family tonight, plus a lunch prep for my husband and myself this week. So I find that when a lot of people are under the assumption that their local grocery stores are more expensive than a place like Walmart, I often find that they are not shopping the sale prices. So most grocery stores will put out a circular either online, or they'll put it in the newspaper, or they'll have it at the front of their store. And those sales run typically from Wednesday through the following Tuesday. And yes, while just your average ordinary walk-in on a random Thursday afternoon prices tend to be a little bit higher than maybe some other places, lots of times their sale prices beat even Walmart in my area. And one of the things that I noticed was on sale for a really great price whenever I walked in the door was Hamburger Helper. It was only 75 cents a box. Now, yes, I know that I can make this from scratch. In fact, I have actually made a video about that very concept before. I will leave it linked in the description box below. But I do find that ready-made box dinners like this that already have all the seasonings and everything in them can come in handy, especially for somebody maybe who is new to cooking, or maybe doesn't care to cook very much, or maybe somebody who just doesn't have a lot of extra spices, seasonings, condiments, that kind of thing on hand, because just about everything you need is in this box. And just because it's called Hamburger Helper, that doesn't mean that you actually have to use hamburger. I noticed on a lot of the boxes that they're starting to put suggestions for other kinds of meat that you can put in it, but you don't even have to put meat in this. In fact, one of the meals that I'm making, I'm not going to use meat at all. And these were actually advertised for $3, but I didn't have to buy 4 to get that price. They just rang up at 75 cents a piece. My grocery store is pretty good about letting us know whenever you actually have to purchase that number of items that they're advertising in order to get the sale price. That was the case where the cheese was concerned. This cheese was on sale 3 for $4, and it said right there on the tag that you had to purchase 3 blocks of it in order to get that price, which is no big deal for me because we eat a lot of cheese around here, and that was one of the things I was going to the store today for anyway. So this particular block of cheese that I'm going to use in these recipes only cost me $1.33, but I did have to buy 3 of them in order to get that price, but I'm just going to use 1 for this video because that's all I need for these 2 meals. Here is what I picked up at my grocery store. They had local corn on sale for 40 cents an ear, so I got 2 ears of that. Both zucchini and squash were on sale 98 cents a pound. That's less than I would pay anywhere, including Aldi. And so I got 1 big zucchini. This was about a pound, just a little over a pound. They also had Roma tomatoes for 98 cents a pound, and this is just a little over 1 pound of Roma tomatoes. I got a can of black beans, just plain old black beans, 2 containers of plain Greek yogurt. These were on sale for 75 cents a piece. One of the great things about stopping at just a regular old supermarket is that they usually will have a butcher counter. And if I want to use just a little bit of meat in a recipe, but I don't want to buy like a full package and pay, a high price for a full package of meat when I don't really need it, then I can just go to the butcher counter and have them give me exactly what I want. So I got 1/4 pound of mild Italian sausage, which is going to add some really nice flavor to one of these dishes. And then I got my 2 boxes of Hamburger Helper here. I have the crunchy taco variety and the cheesy Italian shells variety. They had several kinds there that I had not seen like in my Walmart or other grocery stores. So I thought it was really interesting, but these are the 2 that I picked up. And then I have my block of cheese here. I'm going to use mozzarella for these 2 meals. So this was actually less than $8 before tax and $8 and some change after tax. And I'm going to get dinner for my family tonight and a nice lunch prep for my husband and myself from these ingredients. Now I know that Hamburger Helper also calls for milk. You usually have to add milk and water to the stuff that's in the box in order to make it according to the package directions. But one of the tricks that I use is adding some of this plain Greek yogurt instead of using the milk. So if the box calls for 1.5 cups of water and 1 cup of milk, I'll just use 2.5 cups of water and cook it according to the package directions. Otherwise, then I will add this in at the end. I'll just stir some of this plain Greek yogurt in at the end. And the good thing about that is that this little container of Greek yogurt that only cost me 75 cents at the store today has 16 grams of protein. And that's actually more protein, almost twice as much protein as the milk that the recipe calls for. So I consider that a win. This first recipe I actually made as a lunch prep for my husband and myself, and I went ahead and divided it into 6 servings, which were kind of small to medium-ish, because we usually like to have some veggies or a salad or maybe a piece of fruit with our lunch, but you absolutely could make these bigger portions if you wanted to, if you were feeding people with bigger appetites. And the ingredients I'm using are my box of Crunchy Taco Hamburger Helper, my can of black beans, 1 of my containers of plain Greek yogurt, half of my block of cheese shredded, 2 of my tomatoes, and my 2 ears of corn. So I went ahead and shucked my corn, and then I wrapped the corn in damp paper towels and just cooked it in the microwave for 3 minutes. And I chopped mine off of the cob and I just set it aside until I'm ready to add it to my dish. And then to make the Hamburger Helper, I just used the same amount of water that is the water plus milk on the box directions, which I think was a little over 3 cups of water for this particular recipe. I brought it to a boil, and then I added the rice and the seasoning mix and my can of black beans, which I rinsed and drained. And once that came back to a boil, I covered it and I let it cook for about 12 minutes, and then I just turned it off and let it sit on the stove so the rice would finish steaming. To that, I added my corn and my little container of Greek yogurt and stirred it all together. And that was it. This was ready to go ahead and put into my little containers. I mean, super easy. It really came together fast and didn't require much work on my part. So like I said, I did divide this into 6 servings. You could make 4 servings instead if you are feeding people with bigger appetites, but I just divided it into my little lunch containers, and then I topped it with the shredded cheese. And then to go along with that, I also diced up 2 of my little Roma tomatoes. I always take the really seedy part out of the middle of it and then just chop up the tomatoes. You absolutely could chop your tomatoes up and put them into the rice dish while you're cooking it if you want to eat it that way. I just thought it would be really good to have the tomatoes fresh on the side and just to put them on top, like a salsa or a pico like you would with those things. And then with the little tortilla chips that it came with, I just divided those up evenly, and that was it. And this made just a really great easy lunch that we could eat throughout the week. The second recipe I'm sharing we had for dinner that night. It was the cheesy Italian shells, and then I added some other things to it. And this turned out so good that we did not have any leftovers. We ate it all. And these are the ingredients that I'm using. My Hamburger Helper cheesy Italian shells, the rest of my block of mozzarella cheese, so 4 ounces of mozzarella shredded, my zucchini, my other 4 Roma tomatoes that I purchased, my 1/4 pound of Italian sausage, and my other container of plain Greek yogurt. Now I thought I was going to be really savvy with this recipe, and I was going to spiralize my zucchini with my little spiralizer, but my zucchini ended up being too big to use with my little bitty spiralizer, which is all that I have. So I ended up just grating my zucchini, and I think this worked out even better because you couldn't even tell there was zucchini in this dish, which is sometimes the best thing whenever you are feeding it to young children. So I went ahead and grated mine about an hour before I was going to cook with it because I wanted to put it in a mesh strainer with a little bit of salt so that some of the water would come out of the zucchini. You can see here, this is after just 30 minutes, and it rendered all this water, and I wanted to get some of the water out so that it didn't water down the dish. So to start out with, I'm going to brown my little 1/4 pound of sausage, and a 1/4 pound was plenty. It added really good flavor to this dish. You could absolutely leave this out if you want to make this a meatless dish. I just liked the little bit of flavor that it added. And then I added just a tablespoon of olive oil and the rest of my tomatoes, which I had chopped up, and I let those saute together for about 3 or 4 minutes to kind of just soften up the tomatoes before I added the other ingredients. Now, once the tomatoes and sausage have cooked together for a few minutes, I'm going to add the water for this recipe. And remember that I am using water in place of milk. So I'm using the water that the box calls for, and I'm also using water in place of the milk that the box calls for. And for this particular recipe, it ended up being just a little too watery, which I was able to remedy later on. But it was 2½ cups of water that I used, and I probably could have gotten by with about 2, maybe 2 1/4, given that I'm using zucchini, which was going to render more water when it cooked. But I went ahead and added the seasoning and the pasta and the water to the pot. I brought it to a boil, and then I covered it and let it cook for about 10 minutes. And then I added my zucchini in about halfway through the cooking, and I let it cook for about 5 or 6 more minutes with the zucchini in it. And what happened was it turned out being just a little bit too watery, so I went ahead and just added a little bit more pasta that I had in my cupboard, like maybe 2 additional ounces of pasta. But if you're making this, I suggest maybe starting with a little less water and just keeping an eye on it, because I think that even though I used the method of getting some of the water out of the zucchini with the salt, it still rendered some water in the cooking process and just made it a little bit too watery. So once that was done cooking, I added my Greek yogurt and my cheese and just stirred that all together. And I let it sit on the stove for about 5 minutes uncovered, and it did thicken up a little bit, so that helped some. But everybody really liked this. My husband liked it, my kids liked it. In fact, a couple of them had seconds. I got the last bowl of it, or else I think somebody else would have come along and eaten the rest of this. But this was really delicious, and adding the tomatoes and the zucchini, just that little bit of sausage, really took it over the top. And so I can highly recommend this, especially if you maybe just reduce the liquid just a little bit. All right, you guys, that's what I have for you. I hope that gives you some ideas or maybe some inspiration, even about just how you can take a box meal like Hamburger Helper and upgrade it by adding some other things to it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be sure to check in again with another video very soon. Bye.